There are three keys of good nutrition, and those three keys are balance, variety, and moderation. As a matter of fact, I'm going to add an extra key, and that is abstinence. So we have four keys of good nutrition. We have balance, variety, moderation, as well as abstinence, and you will hear why I added abstinence in as we go forward through this presentation. There are factors that produce advantages to eating a vegetarian diet, which I would like to discuss further what diet I'm on as we go through this presentation. So a vegetarian diet has a lower total fat. It has lower saturated fats. It has no cholesterol, which I'm going to make one quick adjustment right here. Vegetarians eat cheese. So cheese is actually high in cholesterol. So that needs to be addressed because many people think being a vegetarian is eating no animal proteins. However, a vegetarian would normally eat eggs as well as cheese. And to me, that is already saturated fat as well as cholesterol. More carbohydrates, more vitamins and minerals, fiber and phytochemicals are in the vegetarian diet. They have moderate amount of protein. Now, there are many diets in the world today. We have vegetarian, which I've just described. They eat all the vegetables, however, they add eggs and cheese. Then we have pescatarians that add the fish. Then we have ovotarians that minus everything but just eat eggs with vegetables. Then we have vegans, which eat no animal proteins, but are not too careful with things like coffee, alcohol, tobacco, and the times they eat. And then we have health reformers, which I am a health reformer. My husband and I are health reformers, and we teach the health reform diet. So if you want to know a little bit more about health reform, then you would need to contact me, and I will share at the end of the presentation how you can contact me. So we know that if we cut back on fats, especially saturated fats, there is good evidence from both animal and human studies that excess saturated fats increase the risk of cancers. So we know that by eating the saturated fats, we increase the risk of cancers in our body. We know we need to eat more vegetables and fruit, but many people find it difficult to eat or increase the amount of fruits and vegetables they have in their diet. And we're going to talk a bit about the health reform diet so that we can explain the optimum diet, the optimum way of eating. We need to avoid being overweight. Now, some people have said to me in the past, do you think because somebody is overweight, they are unattractive? Now, let's clarify what we talk about when we bring up the word obesity. You see, obesity has nothing to do with looks. It has everything to do with health. Obesity raises the chances of hormone-dependent cancers of the breast, of the cervix, endometrium, and prostate, as well as when people are obese, the frontal lobe starts to shrink. So obesity, the body grows, but the frontal lobe starts to shrink. And that is where we need to be very, very careful with our bodies and weight gain. We need to eat more fiber. Fiber plays a key role in the prevention of cancer of the bowel. Wheat bran in particular has been shown to be effective through its laxative effect. Now, there are many of us that cannot eat wheat due to the way wheat is processed today. So we need to find fibers that are not processed in the way the wheat does. We also have the GMO problems that we are facing today as far as some of the grains are concerned, including corn. When we purchase corn, for the most part on bags today, it will be written GMO. So we need to be looking for any grains that are not GMO. And if you are sensitive to wheat, you need to be looking for a grain that is non-gluten or gluten-free, as we call it. We need to minimize on salt, cured and smoked foods like smoked fish, for an example, hot dogs, corned beef, bacon and ham. And we had a wonderful conversation with one of our beautiful visitors here from South Africa, because in Africa we used to have the corned beef in the can that was actually emergency meat, but nevertheless we ate it out the can. And I'm sure some of you know in Australia, I believe they have a meat called maybe spam. But the meats that are in the cans, the beefs in the cans, are generally very salted, and we need to refrain from those. As well as the cured smoked foods, as I mentioned, the fish. Now the Portuguese have a fish that they love and they call it bacalhau. Now that fish is basically just riddled with salt. In the same way, beef eaters love the beef jerky, or biltong as we call it in Africa. And that again is laden with salt. It's hung up and dried with salt. Now these foods contain nitrates and nitrites, compounds which in the stomach can form nitrosamines. These are among the most potent agents of stomach cancer. Nitrosamines. We need to avoid alcohol. And I think that's a no-brainer, because not only does alcohol affect our gut health, our bodies, but it also affects the brain. Alcohol, particularly if combined with smoking, is associated with cancers of the mouth, the throat, the esophagus and the rectum, especially for beer consumers. It is more harmful for women than for men. Our constitutions are totally different. As a matter of fact, science is finding out that women should never even have past a half a glass of wine, because our bodies are not made for the consumption of alcohol. And in this world today, we are seeing women sit with men and drink 1 for 1, which is really, really sad, because the condition of their livers are totally, I've lost my train of thought. They are depleted of health. And with the result, they end up on dialysis. And that's something we need to be mindful of if we drink alcohol. We need to minimize on browned and charred foods. Cooking meat, chicken and fish at high temperatures over 150 degrees Celsius can create potent and end products called polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons. So when you are grilling and barbecuing, which most people love to do, or even toasting, do not produce overdone meat or burnt toast. This reduces the risk of colorectal cancer. Now, many of you are sitting there probably and thinking, oh, I love my meat barbecued till it's charred. Well, you've heard what I said. It could lead to colorectal cancers, and hence we need to avoid that. We need to give our bodies the best of everything. We were given the diet right in the Garden of Eden in Genesis 1:29, which is the best foods for us. What are those? Nuts, grains, fruits, seeds. Those were the foods given to us. I'm going to just talk a little bit about protein basics. So I'm giving basics, and for those of you who continue to follow, you will be hearing more and more on these diets in great detail. Example, plant protein. I could talk for months on plant proteins and meat proteins, but I'm giving this to you in a nutshell because I believe this will be a good start for you to go away and think about how you want to put your own diet into perspective. Plant proteins are a plus. If you are worried about getting enough protein on a plant-based diet, then guess what? You should not worry at all. Some of you may have watched the movie The Game Changers, which actually is talking about living on a plant-based diet, and many of those people talking are actors like Arnold Schwarzenegger, for an example, or bodybuilders and sports personnel who have trialed and tested the plant-based diets, and they have proven to be fitter, stronger, healthier. Now that's the world. We remember that in Daniel 1, we had already found that the plant-based diet was what helped Daniel and his 3 friends to be wiser, 10 times wiser, 10 times stronger, and they say even better looking. And that's why I've got such a good looking husband, because he lives on a plant-based diet too. So proteins and muscle. Although muscles are built of protein, protein is not a special fuel for working muscle cells. Complex carbohydrates and fats are preferred for fuel, okay? They are the preferred fuel. But proteins are what we use to build they are the building block. The amino acids which we get out of the proteins, the amino acids are the building blocks, and that's what we get out of the proteins. And we have 20 different amino acids that are needed in the body. 9 are classified as essential and must come from food. When these are provided, the body can make the other 11. And where do you get your protein? Well, we get our protein from beans, legumes. So you know how you have tofu? All of those manufactured proteins actually come from soybeans. So they are good, but make sure that when you purchase anything that is already pre-packed, please look very carefully at what the contents are in that pack, because we know some of those foods are highly processed, and we certainly don't want to be putting too many processed foods into our systems. Animal proteins usually have a better balance of amino acids than do plant foods. However, a mixture of plant proteins do provide a similar balance. We were never created, our bodies were not designed for animal proteins. However, science have run tests and they have found, as I've said, that the animal proteins have a better balance of amino acids. However, if we mix our plant proteins, they will have a very similar balance. So we do not need to worry about the lack of. Animal proteins leave an acid residue, whereas plant proteins leave an alkaline residue. And that is why we need to be checking our pH in our bodies on probably, I'd say, a monthly basis. My suggestion is everybody have a pH stick, and you just sample your urine every month. Now, why do I make this suggestion? Because cancer lives in an acidic environment, whereas cancer cannot survive in an alkaline environment. Makes sense? Now let's take a look at protein quality. Grains and legumes are a very good combination, providing very high quality protein. Beans and grains and legumes. Now we also have beans and we also have nuts, which are also proteins. It is important that whole grains be used. Many people had no idea that grains are loaded with proteins. So if you're eating your brown rices, if you're eating your millet, if you're eating your buckwheat, your any grain that I've mentioned, and there are many more out there, amaranth, there are an abundance of grains. I just can't think of them all right now, but go out and look for them. But remember, if you are gluten intolerant, you want to find the right proteins for your body that are not going to affect you. Protein quality of white flour is 22% less than whole wheat flour. So we want to stay away, abstain from white flours, and white flour generally mixed with sugar and milk will leave you with quite a high percentage of alcohol in your gut. Soya is very unique. It is the only plant food that has a complete protein. So soya is one of the only plant foods that you will get the complete protein out of. However, we don't want to eat soy every single day. Some people say to me, I'm not giving my boys soya because boys shouldn't have the soyas due to estrogen factor. Well, the reason why we have a problem with the estrogens in the soya is simply due to the manufacturing. And when you find soyas that are grown with chemicals and sprays, yes, we're going to have the problems. So try to find a source of soya that is pure soybeans and make your own milk, make your own foods with the soybeans. Now, I've been talking for a little while about my cookbook, which should be ready very, very soon. And in that book, I'm sharing a lot about how to make your own milks and how to make some of your own soya products for yourselves and your families. So the quality of soya compares favorably to the protein found in milk. Now, we know milk is a high protein, but we do not touch cow's milk. We drink only bean milks, nut milks, and oat milk, rice milk. Those are the milks that we drink. So be very mindful of the milk we talk about. Too much can hurt. When I say too much, I'm talking about protein. Most human bodies have way too much protein in terms of the quantity of proteins that we actually need. Excess, especially animal protein, can cause calcium losses. Now, people say to me, so how much protein should we eat? Your own hand size. If you are a meat eater, your meat should not be any bigger than that part of your hand. If you are eating nuts, a closed fist of how much nuts fit in there, closed, is your portion of nuts. And your beans, your legumes, I would say an open hand, but not piled up, but just enough. So it might be a double quantity of a closed hand, so maybe 2 closed fists. That's all your body needs, right? We don't want to be depleting our calcium because we're overeating proteins. It also increases the risk of osteoporosis. And it can negatively impact your kidney function in persons with previous renal disease. Do you see how dangerous it can be for people eating high quantities of proteins? Population health studies show that the USA, Canada, and Scandinavia have the highest dairy consumption and the highest incidence of osteoporosis. Do you understand? That is always what we find when we see certain countries have high levels of, for an example, even chili, which I always speak about. With my friends in India always contact me. They have a lot of stomach and colon cancers. That's because of the high intake of curries, chilies, and as you've heard, a high intake of calcium, or rather of dairy will actually cause calcium losses. Hence, we are seeing the incidence in the 3 countries I mentioned, USA, Canada, and Scandinavia. From a variety of sources is as good as meat protein and in many ways superior. This is vegetable protein I'm talking about. If we take a variety of protein from a variety of vegetable proteins, it is as good as meat. And protein in many ways, this protein in many ways is far superior. Why? Because we have more fiber. Do we have fiber in animal protein, in meat? No. It is less diseased. Do we see diseases today in the animal proteins? Absolutely. We've seen that the cows, we've seen that all the chickens are laden with cancers, and they're just cutting them out and putting it on the supermarket shelf. Plant proteins have less fat. Animal proteins are laden with fat, and most people don't cut the fat off or don't boil it out, because meat without fat is like rubber, and it definitely has no taste. I know, I used to be a meat eater. It also is much more economical to live on a vegetable diet. You can grow all your own vegetables, even if you are in an apartment. I have proved this over many years with my students worldwide, putting pots on balconies, pots in every room by a window, and growing their herbs and their vegetables. Vegetable protein also promotes longevity. It is good for the environment. Plant protein is definitely my vote for the environment. Conserves land, water, and energy resources. Do you know that if you put plants on the ground, it rejuvenates the land much easier? And if you have a patch of land that is barren, just a patch of desert, all you have to do is cut trees, find tree leaves from somewhere and put it over that land over here, and you will be amazed at how it starts producing. So we can use plants, leaves, to actually help barren, desertic land to start producing from the ground. It takes up to 10 times less land to feed people on plant foods. Animals need great amounts of land, as well as great amounts of food, as well as great amounts of water. Imagine if we used our land, small portions of land, 100 square meters, you could grow and feed many people with 100 square meters. If you simply live in an apartment, you could grow your pots of vegetables, and you could grow your potatoes, you could grow your herbs. And the one unfortunate thing is you may not be able to have an olive tree. However, the miniature trees now are being formed, and you could have a miniature olive tree, because olives and potatoes will give you much of your nutrients and vitamins that you need in your body, as well as your protein. As I said, it is good for the environment. The productivity of land plants versus animal foods. The number of people fed from 1 hectare of land. Potatoes. We're looking at 1 hectare of land. Can someone Google 1 hectare for me and just whisper it to me, please? So from 1 hectare of land, in 1 hectare to, in Australia we use acres. You can feed 22 people on potatoes, whereas chickens you can only feed 2 people. Rice you can feed 19 people. Milk, which is animal, only 2. Wheat 15, beef 1, beans 9. That's the number of people you can feed on 1 hectare of land, and 1 hectare is, I thought it's about 2 can you say it for me, please?
2.5-ish.
Yeah, 2.5-ish. I thought 2.3. So that's 2.5 acres. you can feed so many people with just 2.5 acres of food. Did you hear that? 2.5 acres. You can feed people with potatoes, rice, maize, wheat, bananas. You can have all that growing on simply 2.5 acres. But if you only have 100 square meters, you can feed your whole family and probably help another family in need. Now, we have seen other issues when we look at meat. Fresh meat, chicken and fish are highly perishable. These are highly perishable foods, while grains and legumes can be stored and easily transported with much less spoilage, right? And the risk of bacterial contamination and food poisoning is far greater from animal foods than from plant foods. Now let's look at some examples of foods with high sources of plant protein. Protein in legumes, garbanzo beans, kidney beans, lentils, lima beans, navy beans, soybeans, and split peas. These are all legumes, and I have a pot of legumes on the stove that probably needs to be turned down. Protein in grains. Let's look at protein in grains. We have barley, brown rice, buckwheat, millet, oatmeal, rye, wheat germ, wheat hard red, wild rice. So we have an abundance of proteins found in all these grains that I have mentioned. Then we have vegetable proteins, which are artichokes, have lots and lots of vegetable proteins, which my beautiful sister here from Adelaide is going to be so happy. She was asking me about cooking artichokes. Artichokes are a vegetable that is high in protein. That's good news, right? Beets are high in protein or have a source of protein. Broccoli have protein, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, cucumbers, eggplant, green peas, green pepper, kale, lettuce, mushrooms, mustard greens, onions, potatoes, spinach, tomatoes, turnip greens, watercress, yams, and zucchini. Now I'm just going to eliminate some things here. These are plant-based proteins, but not necessarily all vegetables, because eggplant and zucchini are not vegetables, and tomatoes, they are fruits. So we're going to look at those. I call those fruits savory fruits, hence I put it into I should have said vegetable and savory fruit proteins, okay? So I just thought I'd make that clear, as well as peppers, capsicums, those are fruits as well. So we need to remember. Now, watercress also is not necessarily a vegetable. Watercress is more a herb, right? So those that I've called out, please remember, we do have some that are vegetables and some that are savory fruits. Now let's look at some of the sweet fruits that have proteins in them. Apple, banana, cantaloupe, grapes, grapefruits, honeydew melon, oranges, papaya. Love papaya and mango, two of my favorite fruits that grow just about wild in Africa, and then you come to Australia and you pay $5 for a mango, right? How disappointing. Peaches, pears, pineapples, strawberries, tangerines, and watermelons. Now I'm sure that list would have surprised you, because all of these have high sources of plant protein. And I'm sure you're going to be jumping up and down now, because you know you don't need too much more proteins. Now my body struggles with digesting a lot of proteins. So I worked out why. because I was giving myself a serve of food with a big amount of beans or nuts until I learned the health reform lifestyle. And I'm feeling so blessed because since changing my diet, I've realized that my stomach can digest better. And the reason is we overload on protein. And when we're overloading on protein, it's going to take much longer for us to digest, right? Now, we can safely say that a plant-based diet can meet the protein needs of healthy individuals, providing the diet contains an adequate level of calories, and it consists of a variety of nutritious foods. If a person has enough calories from a variety of foods to maintain health and normal weight, he is getting enough protein. Now, what do we call calories? We don't look at empty calories. Just a few examples. I'm going to say versus each other. Brown rice versus white rice. Brown rice has good calories. White rice is empty calories. There is no nutritional value in white rice. So we steer away from white and go to brown. In the same way, brown bread, whole wheat breads, is so much better for us than white breads, which again are high starches, empty calories. And I hope that's making sense to you all. So we can see in our lifestyles today the lack of optimal diets. The conventional diet guidelines suggest that humans should acquire a large amount of protein. Hence today, most bodies we are seeing are overloaded with proteins, way too much. And their protein quotas from meats and animal sources like chickens, like eggs, meats, fish, etc. Unlike a pure, I'm not going to even say vegetarian, but a pure health reform diet which acquires its intake from plant protein sources only. Remember, we were given Genesis 1:29 as our original diet. So if we were given a plant-based diet as our original diet, do you not believe the Creator knew that our bodies would need a plant-based diet? Can the pure vegan health reform diet provide enough protein for sound human health? Absolutely. The medical community agrees about the distinct health advantages of a pure vegan diet. But the protein question stays with us because animal products have been promoted by the industries that produce them and sell them, and they want people to think of them as the best source of protein. But do not be fooled, because it is not the case. Now I'm going to look at grains for goodness, because grains were given to us in the beginning, right? What are good grains? These grains are rich in complex carbohydrates. They are different types of dietary fiber and protein, okay? What is so good about grains? Grains are high in vitamins. Now, vegans lack, or health reformers, they say lack B12. No, we don't. If you eat your grains, like your brown rice is loaded with vitamin B complex as well as vitamin E. So we need grains every morning, and we need a little bit of grains at night if we are eating a third meal. They are loaded with minerals like iron, potassium, calcium, zinc, magnesium, manganese, and copper. Do you see how grains give you everything in your body, as well as hundreds of phytochemicals? Why do you believe our Creator gave us grains in the beginning? Because He knew that He loaded our grains with everything that I have just mentioned now, and that is such a blessing. So what is so good about grains again? Well, grains are low in fat, low in sugar, and low in sodium. They contain no cholesterol whatsoever. They can be stored for long periods without losing nutritional value, and they have a wide variety of uses. We can make burgers with grains. We can make sausages with grains. We can make yogurt with grains. We can make puddings, which we don't make sweet puddings. We usually make a savory pudding. And if it's going to be sweet, then we use a drizzle of honey, and we use medjool dates, or we would use coconut milks. And please be careful again with things like that, but we will talk about it later. So a wide variety of uses can be made with your grains. They provide, they are slower release of energy into the bloodstream and better control of blood sugar levels, and they provide satiety, which we will talk about after for anybody that's in the room that wants to know the meaning. For the sake of our recording, we're not answering questions, we're just going straight through. They reduce risk of coronary heart diseases. They protect against a number of cancers, digestive tract, kidney and bladder cancers. They reduce risk of developing diabetes as well, which type 2 diabetes is non-insulin dependent, but it is rife. We have a world pandemic of diabetes right around the world. It is a world pandemic. And it is becoming more and more popular around the world. It gives us an improved bowel health as well as regularity. And many people stop eating grains because they say grains affect them. That's simply because for so long they haven't eaten grains and they've eaten other foods to replace the grains. Their body simply isn't used to it. It needs to be introduced into their diet very, very slowly. And remember, for those of you who are affected by grains, you need to soak your grains overnight with acid. So that's just with a bit of lemon juice over the top, and leave it standing. Rinse it 3 times, and each time you rinse, put a little bit more lemon, just a squeeze over the top. 3 times, rinse it and lemon again, and you will find it will be much more digestible for you. Grains help to reduce risk of coronary heart disease. It protects against a number of cancers. I think I've already said that, but I just want to mention, talking about coronary heart disease, vegetarians have a 24% lower risk of dying from heart disease. And that's simply vegetarians. Can you imagine if you are a health reformer? The percentage increases 3 times. Why? Because of the lower blood cholesterol, the lower intake of solid fat, and it protects us, the protective plant foods as well, like the soy foods, which I mentioned, like the grains I'm talking about now, the whole grains, the nuts, the fruits, and the vegetables, etc. So what are some of the best grains? I've already mentioned a few, but we're going to mention a few more just in case you missed it. Whole wheat, millet, brown rice, barley and oats. Those are amongst the really good ones. And then we've got quinoa, which is another very, very good grain. So what's in a grain? Now the grains actually have a husk on the outer. So if you look at brown rice, it's brown, and white rice, it's white. All they've done is they've removed the husk, which is on the outer of the grain. And in the center, you have the carbohydrate protein, which is the endosperm. And then you have the bran in the middle of the husk and the endosperm, which is where the fiber, the minerals, and the vitamins are. And then, of course, you have in the head of the grain, you have the germ, where the oils, the vitamin E and the thiamine, the B vitamin, is right there. So why would we eat white rice when the husk has been removed? Does that make sense? We need to stick with eating the whole grain foods, which are loaded with the oils, the thiamine, the vitamins, the fibers, the minerals, etc., etc. So what about refined grains? I'm going to give you a percentage loss in refining wheat, for an example. B1, 86% is lost when it is refined. B2, 70%, niacin, 86%, iron, 84%. And a lot of women are struggling with iron, and they're eating highly processed diets, and they're living on refined grains because they don't like brown rices and whole wheats. So what they're lacking is the percentage of these amazing irons and minerals, B6, 60%, that are actually removed from the refined grains. Folic acid, 70% is lost when the grains are refined. Pantothenic acid, 54% is lost. Biotin, 90%. Calcium, 50%. Phosphorus, 78%. Copper, 75%. Magnesium, 72%. Manganese, 71%. And fiber, 87%. Do you see why we should be eating unrefined grains? Because the grains that are refined have absolutely no nutritional value in them whatsoever. So I'm really happy that you have chosen to listen to this presentation today. Now, let's have a look at white flour, 1 kg of white flour versus 1 kg of wholemeal flour. Let's look at the vitamins and the iron. In white flour, you have 2.7 milligrams of B1, and in wholemeal flour, you have 4.2 milligrams of B1. And in white flour, you have 13 milligrams of iron, whereas in wholemeal flour, you have 30 milligrams of iron. Is that fascinating or what? For me, this is just mind-blowing. White rice, 1 kilo. Versus brown rice, 1 kilo. White rice, you have 0.8 milligrams of B1. Brown rice, 3.5. Why would you even pick up a bag of white rice knowing these facts? White rice has 7 milligrams of iron versus brown rice, which has 12 milligrams of iron. I am always amazed at how God gave us what our bodies need. So our bodies are struggling because we choose to process all these amazing grains, and we refine them to the point they have lost all their value, and then we wonder why we have sick nations. So when we were in the Philippines, my husband and I, we were asking the locals to please eat brown rice. And they were saying it's very hard to get because everybody who grows brown rice, they refine it. They have hullers and they remove the hull, and everybody lives on white rice. So I suggested to them to go and find a farm that grows the rice. It will probably be a quarter of the price, and just say, I will buy a sack from you every time you bring it out of the ground. It's probably going to be much because it's grown in water, right? Every time they harvest, my suggestion was to all my students, go straight to the farmers and buy a sack full every month and keep it stored. And they were blown away at how cheap brown rice was. So we have, let's look at the chronic diseases. And we're going to look at the definition of chronic fatigue diseases. And remember, we're talking about nutrition and why we are seeing these chronic diseases. Long course of development, long course of symptoms. Chronic disease accounts for 43% of total disease burden in Australia. 43%. So that means 1 in 4 Australians are affected by chronic disease. 43%. An example of chronic disease on the increase is diabetes. I've already said that, I'm ahead of myself. but it seemed fitting at that point. Type 1, 91,000 Australians are type 1. 1 million Australians and rising are type 2, which is incredible. And that information was 99 2000. So it would probably be, I'd say, add another 20% to that, because it was rapidly increasing from then. A third of the indigenous population have diabetes and are ending up on dialysis. The community in Kuranda have the highest death rate in the whole world. Kuranda, you'll have to Google it to find out. It's in Australia. Sorry, I don't know exactly where Kuranda is, but I know it's in Australia. When I do my statistics, I just look for statistics. But if somebody finds it, tell me so I can share it on the camera. Simple and complex carbohydrates, right? Glycemic index, you always hear me say low GI, that's glycemic index, okay? GI is glycemic index. So GI of carbohydrates tells how rapidly glucose, which is the sugar in the foods, is released into your bloodstream. Glucose release stimulates secretion of insulin. Insulin activates cells to absorb glucose, and glucose enters fat and muscle cells. Now, what we do here on our property, which is a sanitarium, it is a retreat, a sanitarium. What we do is after every meal, whether it's our patients or our students or ourselves, we take a 15-minute amble. What that does is it balances your blood sugars and it brings your body to stability, preparing it for digestion over the next 5 hours. And that's one way of helping to balance your blood sugars in order for your body to be prepared to digest, rather than sitting down after a meal and feeling all gluggy. If you pay attention in your churches, you will find that if you have an afternoon meeting after lunch, you will look around and see many people are falling asleep. So anytime you have an event, and I know we've got many people who run events, women's programs, men's programs alike, and camps, we need to make that a priority, that everybody goes for a walk before our afternoon meeting in order for everybody to be alert. And also people need to learn what is their portion size so they don't overeat. Overeating and the wrong mixes as well will cause you to have a very gluggy gut, which will cause you to have brain fog. We will talk a little bit about food mixes later. Simple and complex carbs. Insulin inhibits glucagon. Glucagon, which is a hormone that stimulates body to burn stored fuel, which is fat, right? Stored fat, when the blood sugar is low. Inhibition of glucagon or glucagon is Glucagon, so you may say glucagon, results in brain and tissues being starved for energy, lowered concentration and weak muscles, hence the amble after you eat. I'm sure things are starting to make a little bit more sense now for those of you who've been here and have been ambling after you eat. Results in gut and brain sending out premature hunger signals as well. Now let's take a look at GL. So GI is glycemic index, GL is the glycemic load, okay? So how much carbohydrate delivered by food in one sitting? So low GL, low glycemic load foods are fruit, vegetables, beans, and whole grains. High GL foods are juices, fine flour, sugar, and water. Now, do you see why health reformers abstain from juices, from refined flours, and from sugar waters? sodas, etc. And we choose to live on a low GL food diet, which is everything given in Genesis 1:29. Isn't that interesting? Those are the low GL foods. Remember, low GL equals low glycemic load. Simple and complex carbs. When you respond to premature hunger signals by eating a snack with a high glycemic load, the cycle just repeats. It's so vicious. Fluctuating sugar levels and elevated insulin levels lead to excessive snacking and therefore more calories. So what do you do when you are hungry in between a meal? You just drink a glass of water. If you are hungry within 2 hours, that already tells me you have not balanced your meal properly. How do you balance your meal properly? Well, you need the optimum amount of carbohydrates, of fats, of protein, and of fiber. Your plate needs to look pretty balanced. The lowest portion always being your protein, because we have proteins in all our grains and in our vegetables as well. Now let's look at people who are overweight. They have tissues that resist insulin, so the glucose is not pulled into the cells. They have high blood sugar for very long periods of time. They have increased insulin production, which leads to exhaustion of the pancreas. I'm always very sad, especially for my family, when I see, them struggling with weight, but everyone has to make a personal choice. And there's nothing I can do. I can only give truth, give facts, and it's up to each individual to make a decision what they'd like to do with the information. Glycemic load of some common foods. Let's take a look at cornflakes. 21. All bran, 4. Orange juice, 13. Simple orange equals 5. So this is your glycemic, or your, not glycemic index, your glycemic load percentage, okay? And then we don't need to carry a food chart shopping. Just remember these simple guidelines. Eat whole fruits and vegetables. Reduce the use of starchy vegetables like potatoes and corn that have high glycemic loads. So we have, you've all been, or many of you have been here with me, and you've probably seen me only chop potatoes into meals twice in 2 weeks. I don't use potatoes often, but I do use them. And sometimes my husband and I love potatoes cooked, baked in the oven with hummus. It's really nice. But don't do it every day, of course, or every week. Just have breaks. Now, corn is an interesting one. Because I'm from Africa, I was brought up on corn. And it's something that the locals live on, and they grind the corn, and we make something called pap or sadza, which we're having for lunch today. And that is corn. But you need to remember, corn that you grow yourself and grind yourself is healthier. But if you can't find, here in Australia we have lots and lots of South African shops everywhere. If you find a South African shop in your neighborhood, you will certainly find South African grown corn, which will be non-GMO. But look on the package and ask them. Beans. These are an excellent source of protein. They are rich in fiber, vitamins, minerals, and other micronutrients, and generally have a small effect on blood sugar and insulin. Nuts in moderation, closed handful, and then you are going to find your body can handle that. But one more rule with nuts: please soak them. Soak them overnight with lemon on them. Remember, they are loaded with phytic acid, and you want that to be removed before you eat them. Rinse them well and then rehydrate them before you pack them away. Otherwise, they will mold very easily if they're not dry enough. So almonds, hazelnuts, Pecans, pistachios, walnuts are low, as well as peanuts, are low carbohydrate alternatives to crackers, chips, or pretzels made with refined flour. So those are, better foods to eat other than crackers and chips and pretzels. Walnuts have hearty health omega-3 fats, and they are such good brain food. Moderation, remember, nuts are high in fat. A handful of walnuts a day without cutting back on other things could make you gain 10 pounds during the course of a year. So, if you're going to have nuts, keep it to your hand size. Good unsaturated fats. Fats slow the passage of food from the stomach to the intestine. Unsaturated fats are found in vegetables, vegetable oils, olive, canola, peanut, corn, and soybean oils, and nuts and avocados. And those are the fats we want. We want the unsaturated fats. They are the good fats. Whole grains. We've talked about grains a fair bit. Until the 19th century, humans ate grains either whole or roughly ground. Whole grains offer a carb package rich in fiber, which we need to be going back to roughly ground grains. And that is what our bodies are made to eat. Whole grains offer a carb package rich in fiber, remember? Healthy fats, vitamins, minerals, plant enzymes, and many nutrients. Refined grains, white bread, white rice, and many breakfast cereals have a very high GL. GL equals glycemic load. Wonderful. I've got a lot of people listening. That's wonderful. Whole grains, there are many options. I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to say it again. Brown rice, oats, barley, millet, polenta, spelt, quinoa, whole wheat breads and whole wheat pastas. And these there's another whole wheat or grain in Australia called bulgur. I'm not sure if you know it. It's Bulgar, but just Google it and find out what it is. I don't really use it, but I know it's a grain that many people are using in Australia. So can you eat lots of complex carbohydrates and still lose weight? My question is yes, you can. Studies have shown that an all-you-can-eat diet that emphasizes fruit, vegetables, and whole grains is more effective for losing weight. Did you hear the list? Fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Genesis 1:29. It's designed for you to live on, so hence it will keep you from gaining weight and it will help you to lose weight. It's very effective and for helping you to keep off fats that are unwanted. Then if you diet or focus on those diets of limiting intakes, because face it, once you get off that diet, you're just going to go back to eating the same way. You're just going to put the weight on. You may as well get onto a optimal diet. Thank you. So in addition to weight control, other benefits of eating complex carbs include reduced chance of heart disease, which I mentioned in a nutshell, diabetes and digestive problems such as diverticulitis and constipation. Did you know that you can live healthier and lose weight permanently without man-made drugs or gimmicks? Absolutely. Did you know that sugar robs the nerves of B vitamins, leaving you nervous and irritable? Yes. Hence, we look at people who have nervous system problems and we look at their diet, what they've been eating in the past, and if they were eating sugars, what was it doing? It was robbing the nerves of B vitamins, leaving their nervous system in strife, right? Did you know that sugar increases the blood fat levels and has a clogging effect on the body? Sugar plays a significant role in the buildup of cholesterol, which can block arteries. Now, there is so much more I can tell you, but I think I've run out of time. I don't even know how long I've been going. Okay, I will start cutting quickly and my husband will have to cut all this out. Did you know that only animal products contain harmful cholesterol? Did you know that chocolate causes the headaches, the migraines, central nervous system irritation, and general or localized itching, depression, and anxiety? All of that caused from chocolates. Did you know that sugar weakens the white cells, which furnish our main line of defense against invading germs? Very sad, most people on sugar. Statistics on sugar. The average American consumes 42 teaspoons of sugar each day. If taken in its natural form, this would amount to over 100 feet of sugar canes. High sugar intake increases serum lipoprotein levels. Now, I'm going to have to stop here because there's an abundance I can talk about on sugars, and I'm not going to, as well as fats. So I am actually going to do nutrition part 2. So this was nutrition part 1, and I will come back another time, and I will do nutrition part 2. So thank you everybody for listening in. Those of you who are local here with us, but not local because you visited us from Adelaide. We've had people from New South Wales. We've had people from Perth. This last 2 weeks has been incredible. And for those of you online and anyone on Zoom, we just want to thank you for being here. And we are excited to get back to nutrition part 2 next.